He called him daddy. Some reporters referred to the relationship as a bromance. NATO's Mark Rutte and President Trump. Now there's talk of a kiss. Watching the antics in the Oval Office is like an episode of Big Brother. And I've got company tonight, Michael Kimmage. We just need some popcorn. Let's get straight to the action. The scene was set, like so many times before. A will they, won't they clash. Two very different leaders, the NATO chief and American president, poised to either wrestle it out or get all chummy again. And it was a bit of both, really. The Trump whisperer laid on the flattery like never before. There was also gentle pushback. He even brought props, which have worked well for other leaders trying to influence American politics.
If you stay here, I go over to these boards here, because I want to show you what this president was able to achieve. And I start with this chart. This chart is about the Trump trillion. The Trump trillion shows you the increase Europeans and Canadians are paying into defense since you took office in 2017. I can assure you this is because of Russia, because of the threat, but I'm also absolutely convinced that you, being President of the United States, being consistently pushing for something which since Eisenhower has not been achieved, which is the Europeans equalizing their defense spending with the United States.
Well, Donald Trump said it wasn't just about the money, and then it got a little weird. Have a listen.
I just want their loyalty. We don't need their money. We don't need anything. We have the most powerful military in the world by far. But I just want loyalty. You know, we're so loyal to them. We're always fighting for them. We have thousands of troops all over Europe. In Germany, we have 50,000 troops. And then you want a little, give us a little nudge, give us a little kiss. We don't want much. And they say, no, we can't do it.
Michael Kimmage is director of the Kennan Institute, a US group that studies Russia. Will Trump get that nudge or kiss, as he puts it, from the world's most powerful military alliance?
Well, he certainly will get these kinds of meetings. You have an upcoming meeting in Ankara, a NATO summit that will be taking place in about 10 days' time. And I think there you're going to have a lot more back and forth of a real kind. And who knows what the outcome of that summit is going to be. But in certain ceremonial moments, you know, President Trump asks for flattery and he receives it. But the abiding question with Rutte and others is just how long it lasts and what real effect it has.
So when you say real, this is more theatrics here, what we're seeing, basically.
Well, I think it's absolutely theatrics. I mean, it's there's almost a comic tone to it, and yet, you know, sort of suitable to the Trump White House in terms of the graphs and you know, the simplicity of the narrative. It rings true in a certain sense, but you know, it matters today. It's very hard to know if it's going to matter tomorrow.
But tell me, Rutte interrupting Trump and walking him through those charts didn't really seem to impress the president.
It's truly very hard to know. I mean, I think he's apparently a visual person, and he sat and listened politely. We have other examples of Oval Office meetings that went off the rails, most famously with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in February of 2025, and this was a far more uneventful, smooth meeting than that. So I don't think that Rutte has too much to regret.
Where do you reckon this leaves their relationship?
The thing with the U.S., you know, European relationship at the moment, and it's far beyond the story of today's news, but it's not a linear relationship. It's not as if the relationship fell apart in the first few months of the second Trump term, and it's not as if the relationship is doing well. It's clearly a kind of dysfunctional relationship, but it's one that goes in circles, where in part the U.S. withdraws military support from Europe. You've seen that over the last few weeks and months. In part, the U.S. remains very engaged and engaged as well in diplomacy and other initiatives with Ukraine, and it goes up and down. And I think what Rutte was trying to accomplish was just to make this an upcycle before the upcoming Ankara summit, and he may well have hit his mark with that, even though it's you know, lacking in substance and almost hard to believe on the surface.
Now, Trump singled out a few countries he wasn't happy with: the UK, Germany, France. He called Spain a horror show because they don't want to pay anything, and said it wasn't about the money but loyalty. So what is it about?
Well, I think in this case it's clear what it's about for Trump. which is that Trump wanted a degree of deference from Europe after the U.S.-Israel invasion of Iran in late February of this year. Trump didn't receive it from every European country. In fact, he didn't receive a lot of deference from any European country in the case of Iran. And Spain was conspicuously critical of this effort. And so I think that for President Trump is a problem. But that's not a policy disagreement between Spain and the United States. It's a personal issue between the leader of Spain and the leader of the United States. But that for Trump, the personal is often the most important in terms of his view of the world.
Michael, Rutte's main goal is to keep the US at the centre of NATO. How fragile is that at the moment?
Keep the U.S. at the center of NATO, that's very fragile. NATO exists to deter Russia, and deterrence is as much a psychological as it is a political and military process. And there, the U.S. has been just a very difficult partner to Europe. It's not been committed to deterrence. It's not making the right statements about Article 5. And then there is the gradual withdrawal of troops and military hardware from Europe, in addition to the U.S. failure to provide certain things on the weapons front that the U.S. had promised to provide. So it's not as if the transatlantic relationship is unraveling or NATO is unraveling, but the fragility is there for all to see. And of course, it hasn't been missed in Moscow.
Has that come up in the talks, though, these reductions of NATO support and equipment and reviewing troop levels here in Europe?
I have to imagine it's come up in the private conversations. And of course, it's a virtue when NATO keeps its disagreements in private and sort of keeps the public, positive and upbeat as today's meeting was. But I can't imagine that it's not an issue in private conversations that President Trump has with European leaders and whatever private component there was to the meeting today between Rutte and Trump.
And you also mentioned Iran. Some allies consider the US approach illegal. How serious is that disagreement within NATO?
Not super serious, because the active phase of the war, at least for now, it could come back, but the active phase of the war is over. And I think Europe agrees with any effort that's going to open the Strait of Hormuz, and that seems to be what the U.S. is working on at the present moment. In a sense, the strait is open. We'll see, again, for how long that lasts. So Iran is not going to be the thing that separates Europe from the United States. But what Iran did over the past few months is reveal all of these differences, which since the arrival of Trump back in the White House in January 25 have been getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
And as far as these talks in Turkey go, this big NATO summit that's coming up that you mentioned, huge investments are planned and are expected to be announced. Let's have a listen to Rutte speaking at the Atlantic Council in Washington a day after that Oval Office show and tell.
We will announce tens of billions of dollars of new contracts. And when our industries from Arlington to Ankara combine their strengths and step up supply, the result is not only improved security. We are in the early stages of a defense industrial revolution that will help grow our economies and support hundreds of thousands of jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. And this is the defense dividend.
Is that a dividend that'll impress Trump?
Potentially, it's possible. I think Trump probably looks at the connections between U.S. defense spending and the American economy. I'm not sure he's able to connect, European defense spending to positive elements of American economic growth. But Rutte is trying to make that connection for him. But to the extent that Rutte succeeds in making that connection, that Europe is investing in things that are going to bring profits and economic benefits to the United States, it's a very wise and sort of successful message. It's the right message for Rutte to make. I don't think that democratic values or European stability or questions directly related to Ukraine are going to convince Trump, but this kind of argument might.
So is this episode of the Oval Office going to remain a bit of a cliffhanger for some time as far as the future of the alliance goes and role of the US in NATO?
Absolutely. And I think that that's how President Trump likes it. It's not what Rutte wants. What Rutte wants is a consistent, strong, stable transatlantic relationship. That's not what President Trump is going to deliver. There will be cliffhanger after cliffhanger. And that's in part because Trump doesn't know his own mind on Europe. He can't decide if he wants to be in or out. So you have that as a problem. But I think Trump also likes cliffhangers. He likes the drama of people not knowing what his next step is going to be. So that's absolutely built in. But at this stage, even the cliffhangers feel quite ritualized. And so it's almost a factor of continuity, although it seems like discontinuity.
Well, he knows how to do reality TV.
That's for sure.
Michael, thank you very much for your time and your analysis.
Thank you so much.
What do you think? Should Trump be allowed to run rings around NATO and continue to call the shots? Or is Rutte doing a good job of just making it look like the president's in control? I'm Ben Fazulin. See you again soon.